After 4 years together, I confronted my boyfriend about our future while slightly tipsy. He's frustrated I bring it up after drinks. A 25-year-old woman is in a relationship with a 25-year-old man. We have been dating for more than 4 years. As our relationship has progressed, particularly in the past year, I have begun to contemplate our long-term future together. I find myself thinking about marriage, children, and purchasing a home together. We are both turning 26 in a few months, which makes me realize that we are approaching our late 20s. He appears not to share the same thoughts. He has never seriously mentioned the idea of proposing to me, nor has he inquired about what kind of proposal I would prefer. He doesn't even engage in serious discussions about officially living together or the locations we might consider for the future. He states that he does not think that far ahead and chooses to live life on a day-to-day basis. Although we reside together, I am not on the lease. He claims this is because he intends to relocate and find a new job this summer as part of his career advancement plan, which is accurate, leaving me with an apartment that essentially serves as an overpriced storage space. I feel anxious about initiating these discussions due to my own anxiety and fear of abandonment, compounded by his seemingly nonchalant attitude regarding these matters. Occasionally, I muster the courage to bring it up after having had a drink or two. I was unaware that this was a source of discomfort for him. Recently, we have had several conversations on these topics while under the influence of alcohol, but if I do not raise the issue, we would likely never discuss them. It often requires a few drinks for me to find the courage to address these subjects. I recognize this as a personal issue, and I am currently in therapy to address my fear of expressing my needs and my tendency to avoid conflict, which stems from my childhood. After our Valentine's dinner, where I consumed 2 glasses of champagne and felt the effects of the alcohol, he shared that a relative he is close to has officially moved in with her partner. I found myself feeling slightly envious. On our drive home, I mentioned wanting to attend a concert in June around his birthday for a band we both enjoy and asked if he would like to accompany me so that I could purchase the tickets. His response was somewhat non-committal. He mentioned that he hadn't thought about his birthday yet and prefers to take things day by day. I then expressed that I wanted us to officially live together. He responded with confusion, asking what I meant since, as he stated, we already live together. I clarified that I wanted to get rid of my apartment and be officially on the lease for our next place. I expressed my willingness to move wherever he finds a job next, but I needed reassurance that he envisions a long-term future for us and intends to marry me someday. I voiced my reluctance to be someone's girlfriend for 2 decades. During our discussion, he was distractedly playing with the cat and occasionally checking his phone as I opened up. I asked him if he ever thinks about our shared future. He affirmed this, but only in terms of whether I would be comfortable relocating for his career, or if I would be fine if he didn't wish to have children. I questioned if this was all he had in mind, and he reiterated that he doesn't think about the future in a long-term context. This led to a conversation about marriage. I mentioned that I am flexible about having children since I am not entirely sure if I want them either. However, I am certain about wanting to get married. I stated that marriage holds significant importance for me, and I would like to be married by age 30 or sooner. Considering that we have been together since we were 21, I asked if he didn't think that by the age of 28 or 29, he would have clarity on whether he wishes to marry me. He said he doesn't view marriage in that light and believes we are too young to get engaged. I clarified that I was not asking for an engagement at this moment, but that around 28 seems like a reasonable time frame. I explained that if I were someone who did not view marriage as significant but was aware that it mattered to him, I would also begin to regard it as important, since I love him and care about his values. He acknowledged this perspective, but mentioned that he is considering marriage because he understands its significance to me. At this stage, he appeared frustrated, and his tone shifted. Although this was a serious discussion, I did not believe I was coming off as confrontational. I inquired about what he was feeling, and he expressed frustration that I tend to bring up these topics only after we have both consumed alcohol. I had 2 glasses of champagne, and he had 2 beers. It wasn't as if we were inebriated, although I admitted that I had broached these subjects a couple of times after drinking. Feeling immediately guilty, I apologized, stating that I was unaware this upset him. I explained that I feel anxious initiating these conversations during normal circumstances and sometimes struggle to find an appropriate opening. Often, we are preoccupied with work, and he is on his phone, making it tough to capture his attention for deeper discussions. I asked if he could appreciate why I might feel hesitant to address these subjects, and he replied that he could not. I mentioned that I sometimes worry about his reactions or responses. He still did not understand, which I recognize is a reflection of my own struggles, as he has never fully grasped my anxiety and confidence issues. I pointed out that he never initiates these discussions, implying why it always falls on me, and he responded that he does not perceive them in the same way I do. I acknowledged his frustration, attempting to validate his feelings, but he dismissed me and remarked that I did not need to understand. At this point, I was tearing up and beginning to cry, which is unusual for me, as I rarely cry, but I felt distressed that I had ruined our evening and that he was now in a sour mood. He casually mentioned that there are other things I do after drinking that I do not do when sober, and I asked him what he meant because I was unaware of what he referred to. He said he did not want to discuss it and wished to avoid hurting my feelings. I responded that if he expressed it kindly, it likely wouldn't upset me, and he grew annoyed, essentially instructing me to stop probing. I suspected he meant intimate matters, which is a separate concern. He stated we could hold these conversations entirely sober if I wished. If he was alluding to something sexual, it was ironic because I had gone out the previous day, completely sober, to buy lingerie as a surprise for him that evening. I mentioned this to him during the car ride home, and he responded with a lukewarm, "Oh, that's nice," but did not appear genuinely excited or enthusiastic about it. I aimed to invigorate our intimate life and anticipated that he would want me to change into it immediately upon returning home, but that was not the outcome. Now, I feel like I am at fault for initiating this conversation after a few drinks. However, these issues have been weighing on my mind frequently, and when I have a drink and lower my inhibitions, they seem to surface, particularly if he says something that triggers my thoughts. I apologized several times, and he assured me that I didn't need to. Yet, I still felt as if I had done something amiss. I had expected discussions about our future together to be engaging and positive, regardless of our drink consumption. I retreated to the bedroom and cried, while he remained in the living room for a while before joining me, and we cuddled before turning in for the night. He offered to get me water and tissues, but was not particularly comforting. Today, I plan to soberly initiate another conversation about this matter with him and see how it unfolds. Summary: I started a conversation while slightly tipsy with my long-term boyfriend about our future together. He feels frustrated that I raise these topics after drinking, yet he never brings them up on his own. Am I in the wrong or overreacting? Story 2. Caught my boyfriend lying about me, receiving nasty comments from his best girlfriend. Trust shattered. How did it come to this? OMG. Trigger warning: abortion, miscarriage, and self-harm discussed. I, 23, female, and my boyfriend Caleb, 23, male, have been in a relationship for a little over a year. Throughout this period, we have experienced our fair share of disagreements. To highlight a few, he neglected to acknowledge my birthday, offering no gift, no public acknowledgement, no flowers, or any sort of celebration. Since our birthdays are exactly 1 week apart, it is hard to believe that he could have forgotten. On a related note, during our joint birthday celebration, he thought it would be appropriate to consider inviting girls with whom he has either misled his friends about intimate encounters or had affections for prior to our relationship. This is particularly concerning, especially since he no longer has connections with these girls or has never been close to them, one of them being the younger sister of one of his male friends. I discovered his past connections with these girls by checking his messages, which I recognize as a significant breach of trust, but I often express that if he would stop providing reasons for my suspicions, I would cease my search. He barely acknowledged either of these issues and dismissed them altogether. In contrast, I had a distressing experience where a man forced himself on me at a bar, which resulted in an unwanted kiss. A few weeks later, Caleb and I took a break, and I briefly dated that same man from the bar. I informed Caleb about the incident, expressed my regret, and told him that I would entirely understand if he didn't wish to resume our relationship. Despite this, he chose to reconcile, and we have been together ever since. 2 weeks ago, he went out with a friend and later asked to see my phone. To make a long story short, his friend discovered an account on a dating app using my photos. I have never utilized dating apps, nor do I have the time to betray him or lead a double life. Since October, I have refrained from going out and granted him unrestricted access to my phone whenever he desires. I logged into all my social media accounts on his device, providing him with all my passwords. He confronted me with unfounded accusations, showing a significant lack of trust in my innocence regarding this matter, and I made the mistake of leaving the house in frustration. I realize that this may have made me appear guilty, but I genuinely needed time to process what he was implying. After leaving, I reached out to him twice in an attempt to initiate a conversation and mend our situation, but he did not respond. After hours of driving aimlessly while crying, I returned to his residence and handed him my phone, which, surprise, surprise, had no dating app account affiliated with either my phone number or email, and a notification indicated that the device had never been used with that app. It is also worth mentioning that I have recently experienced a fallout with my best friend, who is vindictive and aware of the issues I've been facing with Caleb. The photos on that account were all old, some going back to 2022, and all readily available online. This brings us to last night. My intuition kicked in, and after nearly a year of refraining from snooping, I decided to peruse his messages. The first conversation I opened was with his close female friend Abby, whom I have never met or spoken to. I found a lengthy message from her, sent 3 hours before I accessed his phone, essentially stating that I am a terrible person and suggesting that his relationship with me constitutes self-harm. It seems that while I was reaching out to him, he was on a 2-hour phone call with her, disparaging me. In her message, she stated, "From what you have told me, she is a poor friend, partner, and has a troubled history in her past relationships. Again, I have never met this individual, and she possesses only limited information that I have shared with Caleb. For additional context, I previously had an abortion due to sexual assault, suffered a miscarriage in a subsequent pregnancy, and was hospitalized for self-harm as a result of my former relationship, all of which I doubt she is aware of, so I do not take her comments lightly. Caleb has only met my ex once, and during that encounter, my ex and his friends mocked him and insulted him, so I am unsure of the basis for her judgments about my past relationships, or why my personal life has become a topic of discussion. To exacerbate the situation, I discovered that either Caleb was not paying attention when I explained my past to him, or he misrepresented it, as he has relayed to all his friends and his mother that, in October, I deliberately engaged in making out and having sexual encounters with that man multiple times during our relationship. We have been arguing nonstop. I told him if he wants to rectify this situation, he must address the damage, and I cannot continue to support his friendship with Abby. He has resisted this and attempted to negotiate a conversation with her to change her opinion. My decision is quite firm. I can appreciate her desire to support Caleb and try to be a friend, but her attacks on my character are completely unacceptable. He continues to challenge my stance on maintaining the friendship, but I have expressed the need for space and my lack of trust regarding her influence, not physically, as he would never betray me and she lives quite far away. It is utterly insane to make judgments about me without understanding my circumstances, and I believe anyone with basic common sense should control their reactions, especially concerning an issue we settled weeks prior. He argues that he bears partial responsibility because he initiated her involvement and sought her counsel. I counter that seeking advice and forming an opinion of someone based on limited information are distinctly different actions. I am uncertain whether I am failing to accept accountability or excessively overreacting to this situation, so any guidance would be greatly appreciated. In summary, I have been wrongfully accused of infidelity, and my boyfriend has made disparaging remarks about me to his female friend, who is now labeling me as a terrible person and claiming that dating me is akin to self-harm. Edit: I am copying the message she sent him verbatim, as it is significant for context. I am not ashamed of you. I want you to be happy and will support whatever loosely used here makes you happy, but I do not support this and am frankly disappointed. I was puzzled that you got back together so rapidly. You and I had discussed her while we blocked her on every single social media platform we could recall and essentially criticized her. Is this going to be the mother of my children? I can't believe I dated an idiot for a year, and you asserted that there was nothing she could say to convince you to resume the relationship. From what you have conveyed, she treats you poorly, is not a deserving partner, friend, or sister, has a troubled history in her prior relationships, both romantic and familial, and this cheating incident during your break alongside the dating app profile is the final touch to a red flag package of a girlfriend. To put it simply, I believe that what you are doing is self-harm. This is pure self-disrespect if you consider that this is the kind of love you deserve in this brief life we live. You are worth more, and you know it. Do not allow love to blind you. I apologize for the delay in my response. I was attempting to contemplate how to articulate this without coming across as harsh, but there really is no other way to address it. Either way, you do not need to reply to this. You can disregard it or erase it in case she checks your phone and reads our discussions, which we know she has done previously, but please give this some thought. Please reflect on how this relationship benefits you, whether it is healthy, and if it is safe. That is all I have to share for now. I am here if you wish to discuss this. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for feeling this way? I acknowledge that my initial writing may not have been clear, but I urgently need your assistance to clarify the situation. Let's start from the top. I encountered this girl on Fortnite. We'll refer to her as Tiffany, 25 years old, female. Eventually, I learned that she had children. I also met her other friend, and we all got along quite well initially. We played together nearly every day and used emotes with one another, which, of course, held no real significance. Then Tiffany introduced a guy into our group for gaming. I assume she had been playing with him for some time. Let's call him Rick, 22 years old, male. Initially, Rick didn't engage with me or the other guy she had invited. As we played, he primarily interacted with Tiffany while I attempted to communicate with Rick and the other player, but they both overlooked me. Consequently, I hardly spoke during the game, even with Tiffany, as it was Rick who dominated the conversation. At one point, Tiffany needed to restart her game and sent me a message on Discord, requesting that I inform the others to continue without her. I felt anxious initially due to the earlier situation, but she assured me it would be fine, so I eventually complied. She expressed appreciation for my help. However, when I attempted to relay her message, no one responded, which led me to cease communication altogether. Upon Tiffany's return, they resumed chatting in the voice channel, and we played several additional matches. A day or two later, Rick continued to join us, and I began to learn a bit more about him. He appeared to be a decent guy, and I discovered that he had a son. We exchanged jokes, but Rick and Tiffany were the ones who mostly joked around, frequently making inappropriate jokes while playfully teasing one another. A few days afterward, Tiffany suggested that Rick get Discord so that we could all send direct messages to each other. Initially, I didn't think much of it. Yet one day around noon, Rick announced he would log off but would return at a specified time. When the time came, he did not log back on and did not respond to any of our messages. We were curious about what had occurred but didn't dwell on it until Tiffany left a message inquiring why he hadn't returned. The following day, we learned the reason. Rick informed us that before he logged off, his girlfriend had been eavesdropping on his conversations with Tiffany. After he exited, his girlfriend confronted him about why he was flirting with her. He explained that they were not flirting but merely joking and teasing each other, yet she did not believe him. This led to an argument, ending with him breaking up with her. She left, claiming her paranoia was to blame. At that moment, I thought, I can't believe she would accuse him like that considering they were only friends. However, as I recall, shortly afterward, Rick and Tiffany started coordinating outfits in the game. Initially, I dismissed it, thinking it was merely for fun. But soon, I observed that whenever they had the opportunity, they would use emotes together. I began to feel somewhat envious but didn't want to overreact. Recently, while we played a match and landed at Moisty Mire, we entered the prison building searching for loot. Tiffany entered a jail cell and began breaking items, and Rick followed her inside. I made a silly joke about them being in Mickey Mouse prison for disobeying him. Then Tiffany approached Rick and performed a kiss emote. I can't remember its name. It surprised me, so I pointed it out jokingly. Tiffany quickly got offended, claiming she had selected the wrong emote. I brushed it off and moved on. However, in the next match, she did the same thing to Rick, and this time, he reciprocated. They also performed another emote featuring a cuddle team leader themed helicopter that offers kisses. Once again, I assumed they were only attempting to provoke a reaction for amusement. Then they began saying even more questionable things. At one point, Rick joked, "Man, I'd do anything for a hamburger, even if it meant sucking a penis." Tiffany responded, "What if I had a penis?" I once again brushed it aside and laughed. Later, while Rick was adjusting his loadout, Tiffany approached him, started grinding against his character, and made a joke about it. I still didn't think much of it. But during another match, when we boarded the train, it was just Tiffany and me, while Rick did not make it aboard. He remained to wait for us to return with the loot, and Tiffany obtained a mythic weapon. When she disembarked the train, she went straight to Rick and expressed her desire to give him something. Given that we typically joke about me stealing loot, I planned to pretend to take it. However, this time, both of them told me to step back because it wasn't intended for me. I felt upset, despite not understanding why. Even though I recognized it as a joke, I still felt disheartened. Later on, Tiffany reassured me that they were simply joking, yet something about it felt different this time. She handed Rick the mythic weapon along with other items she had acquired. Then, once Rick logged off, Tiffany inquired about my mood. Initially, I hesitated to tell her, thinking it was foolish to feel this way. However, while we played, I discussed it with her and ultimately explained my feelings of sadness. She claimed to understand, and that was the end of it at least. That's what she conveyed to me in the voice chat. Yet later, she sent me a direct message stating, "By the way, the reason Rick and I frequently match and use emotes together is due to our flirting with each other. That's why I give him my weapons and such. I hope that helps you feel a bit better or less excluded." Reading it left me puzzled. Why didn't she just express this during our voice chat when it was just the two of us? I am uncertain how to process this information. Before I conclude, 2 additional points. Prior to telling me that, we were in a Discord server with her friends and family. I recall during our discussion, someone mentioned her husband. I can't confirm if they explicitly used the term husband, but that's what I heard. Take that information lightly. I also don't know whether he ever played with us, and I never inquired about it. Before she revealed her flirting with Rick, she appeared upset after engaging with players who spoke Russian. She mentioned that they mocked her for her speech. I felt sympathy for her and attempted to cheer her up, but she preferred not to talk, which I respected. She remained silent until Rick came online. When he tried to uplift her spirits, she finally began to engage. The same scenario occurred with Rick. I attempted to converse with him, but he wouldn't reply. Conversely, when Tiffany spoke, he immediately responded. That covers everything. I seek your insights on this, as I am uncertain about what to make of the situation. I will await your responses to determine my next steps.